This is Talking Devils, your favourite Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined by Manchester United legend Paul Parker. How are you doing this week, Paul? You good?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, to be honest, Wayne. Not too bad. A good day yesterday. Good day with a
Yeah.
half decent game.
Yeah, it was very entertaining in the end, really. Very eventful as well at the London Stadium. Another eventful week in Manchester United history. It's a storyline club, really. This is how I described it yesterday. Things seem to interweave into each other and tell narratives in a way that no other club does. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you're watching it live on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to get your questions in. Paul and I will do our best to get to all of them. Recent videos on the channel, Lee Lawrence and Phil Marsh with Keane on Friday night. More stories about training against Ronaldo, which are great. Of course, Scott Wootton with Dave Murphy yesterday, straight after the game. It was a very positive reaction on that show. And I know over the feedback from what I've been seeing everywhere regarding the game is that it's not universally positive considering how long it took to get the win. But we'll get to that in a minute. Let's first of all start with the game at Young Boys in the week, Paul. Difficult one. Solskjaer getting a lot of criticism after that one. United took an early lead. Great goal in the formation of it with Fernandes setting up the goal for Ronaldo. And then Wan-Bissaka gets sent off. And from then on, we've talked about Ole on this podcast and we've defended him quite a lot. I felt he was getting his decisions wrong, or like he was chasing the decisions that he was getting wrong, and the shape was wrong, and United were never in it. And then the game's decided on a freak, mistake by Jesse, obviously, and then everyone piles in on him online, which wasn't great to see. But definitely one where a lot of people could hold their hands up and said that there were mistakes all over the place in that one. Disappointing day at the office, wasn't it?
It was. It certainly was. And you go into those games, and with young boys, they've got a decent record against Premier League side. Chelsea are not big fans of young boys, to be perfectly honest. I think they've beaten them home and away when
Yeah.
when a Salah was playing for them. So for the United to go out there and to allow that to happen was really really poor in the way the way they went about it. They knew the occasion was massive for them, and then everything was the pitch didn't help, and that can't be used as an excuse. But when you lose someone 35, after 35 minutes, and you're Manchester United and you're playing against the team caliber of young boys of Unburn, you would expect them to deal with it better. You would expect the manager of Manchester United in the Champions League to be in control of everything that was going on and not to panic. And there was no reason to be perfectly honest. And to a point, he got it right. But you always have to turn around and say, when you've got two key players and you take them both off the field and you're up against a side that they were so wound up about Ronaldo playing, and they was definitely prepared and concerned about Fernandes, two key players of Manchester United, and you take them both off the field, what would you expect that other team to do? The obvious one is that you would expect them to go, wow, that's pressure off of us. We can go and do a little bit more now. We can squeeze up a bit higher and we can push up tighter to Manchester United's midfield because they haven't got a Ronaldo who's going to run beyond us. They haven't got a Fernandes who can knock the ball through. They haven't got a Fernandes who can run beyond us. There's no one else in that team who's going to run beyond. So Ollie, by doing what he done to take off the two headliners for Manchester United, he allowed a team that was just sitting there waiting for something to happen because they was up against Manchester United. And all of a sudden, they saw Manchester United's key men go off. They couldn't believe their luck. Their manager mostly went, wow. And those players suddenly just took an extra breath, mostly gained an extra half a yard, lifted their heads a little bit more and got belief because he made a decision to go and do what he done. And we keep seeing managers do it all the time. The moment they get into a good position, they're in control of the game, not many minutes to go, they start bringing on extra defenders and things like that. Why do they do it? If you're comfortable in the game, why do you suddenly change it by putting an extra person in the back? Because that means sometimes that means you've got an extra one in there, and all of a sudden he might get in the way of something that's going quite well, something that you're in control of, even with a man less. And it didn't work out. And always have to ask the question, what was Jesse Lingard doing so deep when he's been brought on? Didn't need an extra person sitting deep. He
Yeah.
needed what it was more about take the game the other way, put the ball in behind them and turn them round and squeeze up a bit higher. But playing in front of them all the time and getting the ball taken off you means that they can actually react and counter-attack onto you a lot quicker. And that's what happened, especially on a surface which, to be perfectly honest, not many people are used to. Only the teams that are playing at home or playing them regularly, training them regularly, are used to it. United players, as much as they've got their own one at Carrington, and they're mostly used that to take them towards this game, they're not prepared for that game. They're not really 100% sure on their twisting and turning, so it's always going to be a problem.
Yeah, you're right about Jesse, by the way. He was brought, like you talked about Bruno and Ronaldo coming off, and Jesse was the one brought on to lead the line until, obviously later on when they made that last change. So yeah, it seemed that deep. But obviously that plays into the narrative of what followed at the weekend. Before we get to talking about West Ham, one of the big stories of the week was Guardiola coming out and having a pop at the City fans, which I found extraordinary, to be honest. I mean, I always, this is publicly I've been quite critical of Guardiola as a coach, which might surprise some people. But I look at him and I always think, how would he do at United? And I always think that the level of sort of personal questioning he gets, he always handles it pretty badly. I can't imagine he would deal quite well with some of the stuff that Ollie gets directed at him. And that was one that happened to him over the week where he sort of said about the City fans, like we want you to turn up on Saturday. What did you make of that? Because he seemed a little bit passive aggressive, and then he didn't back down when one of their supporters called him out. He didn't back down at all.
I'm a big fan of his. I'm a big fan of him as a player. He's an incredible footballer. Not outstanding, but he was just so clever. You see the way he manages. That's how he played. Incredible player. As a manager and the way he wants to play, I think he would have suited United to a T. Everything about him said Manchester United. His presence, everything was Manchester United. The difference is that he was involved in something from him started with his coaching at Barcelona, then going out to Qatar to do bits out there, and the whole thing fell into place, and it all moved into Manchester City. I think he's looking at it now, and he's looking at someone who's playing initially in front of 120,000 every other week for Barcelona, and he's kind of thinking about it. He's thinking about those big nights, these big things, hearing all that he's heard at City about what City are, 100% Mancunian. But he's thinking bums on the seat, he's thinking big crowd, big nights, Europe, Leipzig, and he's just going 17,000 empty seats. This is not it. So he's come out and said it. And I don't, and I'm with him because when I first went to Manchester, I was, people were telling me, oh, Manchester's blue, all the Mancunians, or all the City fans, that there's more City fans than United fans. They're all in London, they're all overseas, and we've got more fans. And what a pile of crock. After when I was around Manchester, just in that first 6 months around the city, so many United fans would just come all over the place, everywhere. And so and when you hear the things coming out by certain ex-City players, oh yes, Mancunian, it's just because they've got all these tourist fans and everything. City, if they're not running as a proper business, then they're fine. They'll accept that. But they want tourist fans. If that's what they want to call them, they want full houses. To be deemed a big club, a successful club, to go on and build history of that, you need full houses. United will play a League Cup game, and they won't get below 65,000 for a League Cup game. The game this week, they won't get below 65,000 because people want to be there to watch them. And you should never worry about where they come from because you ask those players what they want to do. Every player wants to play in front of the biggest crowd possible. And it makes you feel better when you walk out there. And then if you can get them away from home, as United players get, every other week to go away to London Stadium to come out to that. And make even more so. So playing away from home for say a Fulham and Queen's Park Rangers is completely different to playing away from home for a Manchester United, because you suddenly feel that they've taken over the stadium. And you remember those times, Wayne, when Wimbledon were playing at Sellers Park, or when United went to Sellers Park. What was it, 60-40? It was something that was ridiculous every time. It was carnage on and off the pitch every time we went and played there. Getting on the coach after, it was an absolute nightmare. It was, so what Guardiola says, I think he's got every right to say it. It's just his opinion, and all of a sudden we're hearing about how expensive the tickets are and stuff like that. But United fans go and do it. They go to every game because one of the reasons why people might want to moan about it, but they get on with it because they know there's someone just sitting there behind. If they turn, I'm going to give them a season ticket in, bang, it's gone the next day. It's gone. You can say it, but I'll tell you what, people will talk about it, but they won't go and do it. They want their tickets. They want to be at every game. They don't want to miss out on something that could be history in the making.
Yeah. All right, let's get on to the game at West Ham then. A lot to go through on this one. Keane Freeney says United's away support is the best in the world, and they had another eventful game yesterday. My review and player ratings is always already on the website. Honestly, we don't know how the events of that 95 minutes is going to weave itself into the story of the season. But honestly, that game was why I love watching United. I thought we were not brilliant by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot of criticism about the performance. I can see both sides of it. What I will say is that in response to what happened on Tuesday, United weren't. They were reactive again. Basically, they started quite well. They were dominating as well. They should have done because they've got two banks of two there, McTominay and Fred in front of Varane and Maguire, and it should have been more safe than what it was. It looked like it would be in the first 15 minutes, and then it got a little bit. I think West Ham learned that they could drag them about a little bit, which was concerning considering you've got four players there specifically to be protecting that area. But was what it was. United were controlling it a little bit, then West Ham got into it. I think as soon as West Ham had a couple of chances, United stung back. That's when Fernandes hits the post. I think Ronaldo had a bit of a half chance as well. And then from that, they've pulled us apart and a big slice of luck with the goal. But United's response was immediately very good. Ronaldo scoring. And then you've got the drama at the end, Paul. A couple of penalty appeals for United. I will say that I don't think Ollie said that the first one and the last one were. I think the last one last one nailed on. I'm not sure about the other two. Can't argue about the Shaw one. And obviously Jesse coming on and doing what he did after what happened to him in midweek. So much to pick from. You were there. How did you view it in terms of the game overall, and then the end, which was quite dramatic?
I think the game overall, when you talk about it, you talk about the way that you look at, excuse me, the way that West Ham picked their way through the United midfield. United had the dominance and a lot of the ball. They didn't have the creativity. It was just having it. It was just, there was nothing cutting through. You could see Ronaldo moving around. And when you got Fred and McTominay who had a lot of the ball, there wasn't anything going on. Fernandes had pushed in that little bit closer to get closer to play with Ronaldo, but there was nothing to give it to. And the way that West Ham picked around them, West Ham have a more dynamic midfield than Manchester United. Yeah. Manchester United had two of their midfield players in their midfield. They were strong that game. If you had a Souček and a Declan Rice in that Manchester United midfield player, those two, United would be a better team. Be more cohesion between the midfield and the front and the back, because both of them get up and back, and they're both positive in either half of the field and either third of the field as well. They're effective as any player Manchester United have in that midfield, maybe except Fernandes, because Pogba's just not consistent. You just don't know what you're going to get. So I always leave him out of it because you just don't know what's in the bottom of the bag. And I look at their general play. They should have maybe, in theory, done a lot better. United with the opportunities they got into when they was in the final thirds. But then when you look at the penalties, I would say the only one that was 100% definite was the one at the end with Zuma. Zuma knew it himself by the way he got up, and Ronaldo's reaction said he knew it 100% as well, in the sense of he didn't even bother shouting and screaming and thumping. He just laughed.
Yeah.
He just
I think he was
laughed.
laughing because he thought he knew Atkinson didn't give it, and I think he was laughing because he knew VAR would overturn it, and then
Yeah. I mean, you could just, that's exactly what it was, Wayne. To be perfectly honest, the others were not near it. Were not penalties. The one I feel was a penalty was Wan-Bissaka.
yeah,
When he's
yeah.
that was a penalty without a shadow of a doubt. So we've got
similar to Kyle Walker's on Saturday.
Oh, Carl Walker's one was embarrassing. I mean,
Yeah.
John Moss, I saw him at Crystal Palace, the Crystal Palace game, Crystal Palace v Spurs the other week, and he was embarrassing in that game. John Moss's biggest problem is he can't get about the pitch. That is his biggest problem. I mean, when you see him run, it seems like he's running on a conveyor belt. The man can't move. It just shocking. But that was terrible. The Carl Walker one. That one was bad as well. The Wan-Bissaka one. That should have been a penalty without a shadow of a doubt. And that one, and they got it wrong. I don't know what's happening with VAR. We think it's not interfering too much. There's not too many dramas. Sorry about that noise. My boy has done something with the oven, and it's bleeping all the time. So yeah, some of the decisions, Martin Atkinson. I said it to you earlier before we come on air, but the thing that I think that happened with Wan-Bissaka, this is getting right on my nerves here, by the way. Is that with Martin Atkinson, it was all about with Ronaldo. I think it was the situation of the boy who cried wolf in the end. And I just think I think because now the referees have been given more freedom, is because of is now allowed the referees to then make their own mind up about things when something's getting on their nerves. Can they just suddenly go, nope, that's wrong, and make their own decisions rather than being told? And I think in that, Martin Atkinson should have been told. Someone should be speaking to him, and he can come at me. That's the reason why VAR's there, to help him in situations. I don't know if he got personal with Ronaldo and he just took it as no, he's thrown himself. But somewhere along the line, if there's like 3-4, surely someone ain't going to go 3-4 times. And that last one was so blatant and what it was. And if it was given, because the people around me, like virtually, you could, if they didn't say it, it was in their faces, in their eyes, saying that one definitely is. Everyone, you could just hear it around, even the West Ham fans in the round, you could hear that kind of, game's dead now. But the difference is as well with the one that Wan-Bissaka gave away, and that opportunity then, West Ham could have gone 2-1 up.
Yeah.
And would they have given it away so quickly as what they did previous? You'd have felt a David Moyes team might have learned a lesson. But I don't know how you want to go. Are you going to talk about what happened at the end?
Well, let's get to that because obviously, no complaints on the show one for me. He's put his hand out. In older days, you might have said it's a bit close, but his arms out, an unnatural position. You can't complain. I didn't complain. The only thing for me was if you're going back to check that, you've got to go back and check the Ronaldo one. You can't be serious. So
that's the protocol. But I don't know what makes a referee go and do that. Can a referee just on his own mind, like we would do, if we're not 100% sure, would go and speak to someone about something. If you're man enough to man up to it, look yourself in the mirror and go, I might have got that wrong. You need to go and speak to someone to turn around for them to, I think you got that wrong. I think that go and have a look. But surely you would do that yourself because you want to come away after doing your job for 95 minutes and go, I got all the main decisions correct. And you can only do that if you get an opportunity to look at it again. Football's allowing that man in the middle the second chance, a second chance to look at it before he goes and nails it. And they're not taking it. So are they in control of themselves, or are they still being governed, referees? I believe are still being governed, because surely Martin Axton, all his experience, would have wanted just to go and make sure that after the couple of ones with the Ronaldo before, and seeing the pace of it, everything that's gone with it, and the reaction, he must have heard the reaction. He must see something when you look in people's eyes to know when they're telling the truth. A reaction, because that first reaction, you can't hide that, Wayne, can you? It's impossible. That first reaction, and then maybe that bit after, you look at talk about Luke Shaw one. Luke Shaw was handball. There's no doubt about it. His arm was out. There's no reason. Everyone else goes in there, kick your arms down. Luke Shaw's there, lazy. It's all right. It's going to be all right. Okay. Got caught out. And his reaction, you can see his reaction straight away. He brings his arm down quickly. And then you look at him, and then he's going, no, no. And then you know. But he didn't do that. I mean, Harry Maguire's the funniest one. Referee comes back and goes, Harry's going, having a go at the referee, saying his arm's down there. What happens? They put it up on a big screen. Harry Maguire sees it out of the corner of his eye. He looks up at the screen, and then he suddenly converts you. I think he's kind of going, oh, okay. Just it just accepts it that his arm was up there. His arm was like there or higher, So maybe they shouldn't have shown that on the big screen, but it calmed Harry Maguire down.
So the game basically turned on 3 substitutions, didn't it? Keane asks about Varane's performance. We'll get to that in a moment. But the incidents of the game. So the 3 subs, basically, Ollie brings on the wingers to change the sort of dynamic on the wide areas. And to be fair, I think that's right, because we got asked a question on Twitter as well about this, about will we talk about the wingers and how difficult it was yesterday. And it was a difficult kind of game for them, because United have that problem where they're inward-facing wingers and they don't go on the outside. They're not really wingers; they're inside forwards. Let's call it what it is.
You have taken the game back, haven't you? Inside forwards.
There'll be half-backs next.
Yeah, there will be. Yeah, Finney on the wing.
Yeah, but yeah. So that's he made those changes to sort of change the dynamic wide. Also brought on Matic for Fred. I always find this funny, because a lot of people online who were criticising Ollie, I think I saw a few comments of them saying, why did you... This was even after what happened. They were saying, well, if they brought Matic on earlier, it would have been better. But what can you do when you've had a game-defining moment? By the timing must have been right, basically. Matic was brought on to do what Fred wasn't doing, and that was make accurate passes. He immediately makes one straight. I know it sounds simple, but he bosses it straight into Lingard.
It's not simple. It's not simple, Wayne. Otherwise, everyone would be doing it. That's the thing about it. It's the hardest thing in the world, is to make that simple pass. Because you look at it, Fred looks at it sometimes and looks, and then he looks, and then by the time he's passing it, it's gone.
Yeah.
So, and Matic sees it. His first thing he done when he came on, someone gave the ball to him, he just played it round the corner, straight in. And that's what you want from your midfield. You want fluency. You want the ball moved quickly from midfield in towards your front players, your attacking players. And Matic can do that. But it's about getting the right person next to Matic so you can use him in that way. And Ollie hasn't sorted that problem out yet.
Yeah. Well, yesterday the timing was perfect. He brings him on. He sets up that position for Jesse. Jesse can fashion the space to shoot, and then instantly creates this storyline where he's got redemption for the week that he just had, basically. And then if you think redemption is the theme of the day, you go down the other end. Shaw, as we've already said, gives the penalty away. De Gea, who was pilloried by everyone after the Europa League final, us included, by the way. There was a moment where we were thinking, Ollie's got to make that decision. I think he didn't make the decision. COVID made the decision at the start of the season, but De Gea has more than earned his place. And yesterday adds to this redemption arc. It saves the penalty. Only after David Moyes brings on Mark Noble. Talk me through that, Paul, what you made of that, because it was he looked so Moyes, and I've got a lot of time for Moyes. I feel sorry for the hand that he was dealt at United. I don't necessarily think he should have got more time, but he looked so smug when he was bringing Noble on, like this is the main event of it, and it did turn out to be the main event, but for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, first of all, the bit with De Gea is that I'm one of those people. Like, everyone has been persecuted. Everyone was I still don't understand it why everyone went all in on Dean Henderson. Still couldn't understand it. Still a young goalkeeper, very young, and he's had a couple of good seasons with Sheffield United. He had shots galore, so he had a lot of practice. The one thing he's never had Dean Henderson. He's been in that position behind a so-called top team, a so-called top defence, and not getting shots every 2 seconds. I think that's easy. You can judge a goalkeeper. Can he make enough saves? Dean Henderson made a lot of saves. David De Gea's strength is that his concentration levels are better than Dean Henderson's because he's experienced. He's an international, been there for a while, played for big clubs, played in big games. So you judge him over that. You look at him now, since this season started, as you said, it's more than anything a stroke of luck that he's playing because of what's been going around. And no one's talked about him because he just does his job. But if it had been Dean Henderson there, people would have been trying to sell it. Oh, there's a reason why he's playing saying that. But no one says anything with David De Gea. He made a great save with his legs yesterday, with his foot. First half with his right foot. Could have been 1-0 West Ham a lot earlier. His positional sense, the way he talks, the organisation, people don't talk about that. And then all they want to do is talk negatives. And then when he gets in that position, I could imagine everyone just went, oh, there it goes again. He's going to do this and do that. And he makes a great save in the end. You can call it a bad penalty, but if he saves it, if he has to move it away, it's a great save. So he doesn't get anything for it. So everyone's just sitting there waiting for something bad to happen, and they're going to go all in on him and go back, bring back Dean Henderson. And it's quite sad. It's quite a sad state of affairs how people are like that now. What football's become now, that everyone is just sitting there waiting for the worst bits to happen and then to do it. Never want to regularly say anything positive about somebody because he hasn't had made that many great saves. Pat on the back for defence, but he's made the things easier because he communicates or he adapts himself that bit early to make sure he doesn't get caught out that often as maybe an inexperienced Dean Henderson would. They get a bit erratic, a bit like a Pickford at Everton. Who would you rather have? Someone who's going to make great saves and also make things tipping it over the bar, or somebody who's cool, calm, and collective in what they do. You don't see him ruffled. And that's what we used to talk about with our goalkeeper. Any British goalkeeper, they're calm. When we talk about Peter Shelton, Ray Clements, Dave Seaman, those keepers, that's how we wanted them. So, but anyway, the penalty and of it, the thing of what I was looking at was because it took so long because of the situation with VAR. It looked like from where I was sitting, and you've got to remember that you sit quite a way back from the pitch there. It looked like virtually Mark Noble was telling David Moyes, get me on, I'll take the penalty. And the commentator I was working with said, Mark Noble's going to take the penalty. And I virtually just said, no, he's just bringing him on. It's his last season. It's another appearance. He's just notching up appearances for him, which is one of the worst bits of managing, I think, is being sentimental. It could cost you your job. I think so. Then all of a sudden I see it, and I see Declan Rice suddenly turn and walk away, kind of storms away, and you could see he's kind of not really happy about it. And Mark Noble grabs the ball, and I just went, oh no. And I just knew I went so negative about it because I just didn't like it. Just didn't like the idea of it. And then it happens. At the end of the day, if you have a car sitting in the garage for so long, and then you bring it out for that first run to go and win you a race, it isn't going to materialise because it's a little bit fluffy around the main parts of it. It needs a bit of a blowout. Mark Noble running up and down the touchline, waving to the fans, and then going on the pitch to take a penalty is not the best way to prepare to go and take the last kick of the game. And I had someone behind me, I don't want to mention his name, but he talks a load of rubbish on the radio. And he's telling me after the game, I think this can work in our game though, because someone on the bench just to take spot kicks, and then someone's popped up and said, well, this is football. It's about heartbeat. It's about passion. Everyone's built up for it. Someone coming onto the pitch in American football, that person is kicking the ball for about an hour while the game's going on. At any given time he comes on, he's kicked the ball so many times, so he's tuned into kicking the ball. Mark Noble has just run up and down, stretched, and waved his right arm and clapped people. And he goes on, And I think all he was going to do was try and write a little bit more history into his last season at West Ham. David Moyes, as much as he's saying about it, has made a massive mistake which is going to bite him worse than what it is Mark Noble, because Mark Noble's, this is his last season. David Moyes has got to live with that. His next game is important because people are going to talk about that decision, because it was his decision to allow it. And Declan Rice or Lanzini should have been one of the two players who would be given that opportunity to take that penalty.
Yeah. Luckily for us, Noble took it. United won. Good save from De Gea. Like you said, not a great penalty, but it reminded me of Schmeichel's save against Bergkamp in the semi-final in '99, where it's not a great kick, but you've got to commend the save. You've got to commend it. And De Gea, Solskjaer for the timing of the subs and getting those right. Lingard, and Ronaldo for the fact that he should have got the penalty at the end. A little bit of redemption all round for United.
Just the one with Ronaldo as well. Just prior to him scoring, he tried exactly the same technique about a minute earlier when the ball's coming off the left-hand side, and he's kind of gone to hit it off his laces and flick it with his right foot, and it went wrong. And he's pulled that face, and you could see he was so disappointed. And it says something about him as well, because that similar one happens again. And what's he going to do? He goes and does exactly the same thing again. Bang, it's on target. Great power, by the way, to do that with such a little short, I was going to say backwards, kind of is a backlift in a way, but it's more, could be deemed a side. But then as well, to do that and not just admire it, to follow it, to tap it in. There isn't many who would do that, by the way. Many would have just shot and then start thinking, cool, what a great save. Oh, I'm lucky I am. He didn't. He thought about, I haven't scored that one, but I can this one. And bang, so that says a lot about him, to be perfectly honest, and what the way and what he's all about. Everything is that about scoring goals, about being the best at everything he does. And if he tries something and it was the right thing to do but poor execution, he would go out and do exactly the same again, and that's what he done.
Yeah, I'm going to be very interested to revisit this conversation in maybe 4 weeks' time when we're looking at the pattern of United's away games. Obviously, the unbeaten record goes on. Late wins at Wolves and now West Ham, and I begin to wonder: is the pattern that United are doing better in these games where they've struggled in the past, or is it just a one-off? We'll see. We'll come back to that. Obviously, that's something that time will tell. Keane asked about Varane, so a quick word on him before we move on. I thought he played quite well. You were less convinced, but I don't know if it's. I'm seeing it a bit more generously, but then again, that's the new shining gloss. And I saw Maguire pulled out of position a couple of times, and then as the game wore on, and I thought that 4 players who should have really been compact weren't as compact as I would have expected it to. You know what I mean? I would have expected it to have been a blanket over a fire, but it wasn't really like that.
No, it wasn't. I mean, for me, Varane was the better of him, and I thought him and Wan-Bissaka played really well. I thought they both did their jobs defensively. Yeah, Varane looks the better player, the more controlled player. Harry Maguire looks now he's quite scruffy in the way he plays. He looks quite, he doesn't look comfortable, got caught out trying to be too clever, trying to dribble. He dribbles too much. I've said that from day one about him. Everyone was telling me he's good on the ball. I'm saying, no, he just dribbles too much to get himself out of trouble because he's not comfortable on his left side. So he got caught out a few times. Luke Shaw, maybe going forward, maybe too much now, maybe trying too hard to do that, and it's affecting his recovery runs. And by the way, Luke Shaw needs to pull his socks up because he is looking, maybe, honestly, he just looked like the roughest man in the world with his socks like that. I know that the boss wouldn't allow anyone to go on the park, go and look like that in a Manchester United kit. It's just not good. He hasn't, if he's trying to be Jack Grealish, he just hasn't got the calves. Just hasn't. But as a back four, you've got to say that they looked all right. But I think Varane, when you go and sign a player like Varane, it's all about the big games. Look, I mentioned the boss's name. That's what he was always on about his big players. He's looking for them to flourish in the big games. And that's where you're looking at Varane then when he's up against, playing against Liverpool? Is he going to be the same cool, calm, collected person? Because when he walks off a pitch, when I've seen him in this moment in time, you have to ask yourself, was he just watching the game or was he playing the game? Because he just looks like that. There's
Yeah,
nothing seemed to have phased him. He looks so relaxed, which is a great sign. But can he be that relaxed when he gets up, front three of Liverpool,
yeah,
or the movement of Manchester City without Man City not having a front man? How he's going to deal with that with no one in and around him to mark? He's going to have to be aware, space aware. And if it's about being space aware, then he's got to communicate with Harry Maguire, who can't deal with space. Harry Maguire needs someone to get up against and fight against. So that'd be interesting how Ollie deals with that situation when he plays Manchester City.
yeah.
But Ollie's record against Manchester City is quite decent, to be perfectly honest. So he'll be feeling quite confident in that game, I'm sure.
Yeah. Comment from Aneem Nepal says, Yo Devils, Manu, all the way, go, go, go. Yeah, you'll find that on this podcast for sure. We definitely agree with that. Paul, you told a few comments you've said through this podcast has made me sort of like think a little bit hesitant about bringing this conversation up. But you talked about one of the first comments you said, no room for sentiment in football. And then you've talked a little bit about Ollie's sort of relationship with players. And one of the big comments to come out of the last week was there was an interview with Phil Jones, basically, and Ollie defended Phil Jones. And it's not necessarily about Phil that I want to talk about, but about the criticism that's being levelled at Ollie and that sentiment aspect, really. I get the decision that, and I agree, I think we've talked about it at the time, that the decision to give Phil a new contract when it was running out seemed like the wrong choice to make. I didn't know that Phil's injury was the same as what Ollie had when he was at United. And I think that changes quite a bit in the way that I look at this. And I wanted to get your take on it because Ollie obviously suffered a terrible knee injury in 2003. And he was out for the best part of 3 years. And it was an injury that ruined his career. It made that he had to retire after that season when he came back. And I'm sure, like you, like me, you would have been sat there. You would have probably seen a few of Ollie's comebacks when he came back and he wasn't quite right, and he had to go and spend some time away again, perhaps have another operation, and that lasted 3 years. I always tell anyone when I'm talking about Ollie, one of the most emotional moments that I ever saw in my time as a United fan was when he came back and scored against Charlton in the 2006-7 season. We'd been out for 3 years. He came on as a sub, mostly 3 years. I know he came back in fits and starts, but he came back and he scored as a sub, and sort of like he came over to the fans and sort of like said thank you to the fans. And it made me so emotional because I'm like, no, this is your moment. You've worked hard for that. You've been through so much. So there's two things on this I'm coming to, because obviously you had a real injury struggle towards the end of your time, and you have been quite brutal to yourself with the way that we've talked about this. In the past, you kind of said, no, I understand I had the injury problem, and then football, the football of the side had moved on and Gary was breaking in and everything, and you've been so pragmatic and magnanimous with that. You've seen it from that side, and maybe you'll see it from that aspect when you're talking about Phil in a moment. But I'm just looking at the criticism that Ollie's got. People call him a coward, and they don't really. I think when people call Ollie a coward, they don't remember the three, or maybe they weren't United fans, so they don't remember the 3 years where he spent fighting for his career and then coming back and playing a season. They don't look at the guy who was intelligently reading games forever. And then we fast forward to Phil Jones, and to hear that he's had that injury since January 2020. So it's basically coming up to nearly 2 years that he's been dealing with that. And I can sort of see why Ollie's stuck with him. I know you said about sentiment in football, but United does kind of sometimes like indulge in a little bit of sentiment like this. They did with Owen Hargreaves for a long time, where they'll stand by players. And I can see why Ollie's doing it, basically, because he's kind of saying, they stood by me, so I'm standing by you. Where do you come on this situation? Because obviously, like I said, you went through a similar scenario where your you're basically your path out of the club was affected by an injury that you suffered. But I was just wondering how you see it from Ollie's perspective, really.
I've got to look at his way of doing it, and feels very, very fortunate because I think maybe if it wasn't someone who's Manchester United through and through as a manager, then I think it could be a different scenario. Every chance it would be. But I look at my situation, and it was a different era. Finances were different.
Yeah.
The boss had to, in theory, get something back into a budget.
Yeah.
And to have, for me, and then maybe in the back of his mind, he's thinking he's looking for something else. He's looking for something that's going to be guaranteed and might not break down again because he knew the severity of my injury and the operation I had to have. And he just said it to me as it was, which never a great feeling, but you take a little bit of a while, then you understand why it happened, and that's what like now we're talking about it. You understand why he pushed through with Gary Neville. History tells you that was correct. I saw it, I knew it, and I couldn't really argue against it. To be perfectly honest, I look at the situation with Phil. It's as I mentioned earlier, it's a different era. There's so much more money about to hand out, and it's mostly just a drop in the ocean to do that for somebody.
Yeah.
There's every chance that the new contract he's got is of a different pay scale, more to favour the club than to favour Phil. But it's a bonus for him because can he go and get a move somewhere else? The answer to that is mostly no.
Yeah.
No one's going to go because of how long it's been. So after this one runs out, he's going to have to virtually go and be on a pay-as-you-play to prove himself for quite a while in that sense, because people have got to find out where his appetite is at this moment in time after so long not doing anything at weekends. Just what, and you have to check that because you do lose that appetite. And it's about whether or not you can get it back again and push yourself through to go and make those big challenges because he might be concerned about being hurt again. And Phil has got this uncanny knack of putting himself in awkward situations in trying to defend.
Yeah.
So there's all that coming to it. So one side of me says, yes, I can see where he's coming from. The other side is still the same about sentiment. And sentiment is affecting him at the moment, Ollie, because people are questioning him about what he's doing. They're thinking, could that money be used somewhere else to get somebody who's actually going to make a difference in the first team? He's another centre half. Too many centre halves in the club.
Yeah.
Bailly got a new contract as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
You think it's a why. It's just funny how all this is going on in a league which has got so much money, but still, in theory, you could still tighten it down a bit and not go out and be so extravagant with it, and at least make it a little bit better to affect you at the top end, which the most important part is winning games in the league, really.
Yeah.
So I get Phil's side. There's no point people getting angry and aggressive about it because it's, in theory, it's not affecting United and what they're doing in the first team. It might only do a little bit because of the monies that these football clubs pick up. So, no, it's wrong that people have really attacked it. The lad has had serious, in every injury he's had, it's been a serious one. And he does end up in awkward positions all the time. It's quite uncanny, again, I use that word, how he gets in those positions but he makes himself vulnerable every single time. That's mostly why he's been hurt so much. So you have to feel for that. But Ollie's got to be very, very careful now about how he's doing things because he's always going to be assessed and judged as long as he's manager of Manchester United. And the only way he's going to be able to put a band-aid over the situation is to go and win something. It's as simple as that. And quell him for a little while because then he's got to go on and on and on.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, Paul, for me. I think I agree with everything that you just said, and I just think you can agree or disagree with the decision to keep him on. I didn't agree with giving him a new contract, and you can even be critical of Ollie for doing it. But knowing what I know now, knowing that it's a similar injury, and knowing what Ollie went through, spending that 3 years as a supporter, loving Ollie and wanting him to come back and do well. and understanding the frustration that he had. I can 100% understand why he's done it. And like you said, there's a key driving factor that they've got the money to do it. They've clearly got the money to do it, and didn't have it when you were there. If people want to know why they didn't, that was the summer after '95, where the club had just redeveloped the stadium. The players had been sold in Hughes and Kanchelskis, and yes, a large part of that was because the class of '92 coming through, but they were still managing costs on a much more frugal scale. For what the future would hold, really. So yeah,
We have to say as well, Wayne, by the way, sorry to butt in there, but as well, Phil as a person makes a big difference as well. If we didn't Phil was a nice person, he's a bit aggressive, he's a bit angry, a bit bitter walking around the dressing room, he wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That tells you about how he's dealt with the situation, because it's not easy when you've had a taste of a bit of a good time around somewhere and you're kind of being pushed aside and deemed not good enough to be involved. And then when you have played in the games, the under 23 games and things like that, you're going through that. It's about you as a person. When I talk about people being good around the dressing rooms, it isn't always about being the laughy, jokey person, walking, putting your arm and being involved and all that. It's about sometimes being looking around what to the young players as well. How you being around? Are you treating them right? Are you being a good pro when you played with them in the under 23s? Are you helping them, or are you being bitter, twisted, and shouting, screaming, and at them and being a big time Charlie? I don't see that in Phil Jones. So Phil Jones, as a person as well, has contributed to what Ollie has done. Because if he hadn't been doing that sentiment, Ollie might think about his injury, but go, I don't need you around. You're not imposing yourself in the right way on my young players or the senior pros as well, because you're quite bitter. So that plays a part as well.
Absolutely. Let's move on quickly let's sum up, review the next couple of games or preview them even. For once, the game against West Ham in the League Cup, a League Cup game, looks like it might be an entertaining one. United have got a lot of options. They're obviously going to rotate, probably give Ronaldo a bit of a breather. So it'd be quite, as I say, a breather. It'd probably be demanding to play. But I look at that and I think, it's a good opportunity to see some different forward options from the players that we've got available. Is it something that you're looking forward to?
On a United point of view, I would say, look, Ronaldo shouldn't be playing. I think maybe Cavani should have a run. There's other players. There's a lot of other young players in their games. West Ham, I was chatting because I was doing their game in Europe the other day. I don't think they can afford to have the likes of Declan Rice won't be playing, can't be playing. The likes of Souček can't be playing. They're two key players. Maybe Antonio might play because he had to miss the game yesterday, so he might have a run out just to keep him ticking over. But then the other side of it, you don't know whether or not be worried if he was to maybe go and get himself injured, maybe slightly pull a hamstring again is that's his main injury problem. So there's going to be a different back four. I think Craig Dawson will come in and play. Maybe Diop will come in and play with Craig Dawson. Ryan Fredericks will come in as well. So they're going to have a completely different side. Make a lot of changes before this game. United's changes they make, when you look what they can bring in, they should still win the game quite comfortably. And as you just mentioned now about Ronaldo not playing, he still wants to score goals, doesn't he? So he'll look at this and say, "There's goals there for me." To be perfectly honest, so you got to maybe not close that door on that one, and him somehow playing a part, even if he's to sit on the bench. I think he might just do that himself, just to believe that he can go and score a goal, because he's got this little run going as well, like you're saying, consecutive games and goals. So I think he's going to want to keep that going and not have one missing in between.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. Interesting to see what's happening to Juventus in Serie A after all this talk about how Ronaldo ruins teams and they're dropping down and he's doing so well for us at the moment. I must say, I don't want to harp on about Ronaldo, but God, you mentioned that earlier about the instincts that he showed for that chance. Yeah, it's a tap-in basically, but it's all the hallmarks of a world-class striker. Aston Villa next weekend. It's been moved for 12:30. Villa did very well against Everton. They're showing, and I might be jumping the gun a little bit with this, but when you lose a player like Grealish,
No,
Sometimes,
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm so with you. What you're going to say next? I don't even know what I think I know what you're going to say, but go on.
sometimes you get a community like aspect in the dressing room where they come together to sort of compensate for the absence, and it feels like you've seen that over there.
Yeah, yeah. I just believe it. I looked at them with him, and it seemed like everything was. It was just like, okay, we're the bit parts. We'll be at the back singing the chorus, and you're up front singing the main song all on your own. We'll just do the chorus, and that's how it was at Villa. And all of a sudden now they've become so collective, and they've got plan A, B, and C and how to attack. It
Yeah,
wasn't just go left and dribble, forward forward pass, back sidewards, fall over, free kick. It's now they're playing, and other players now feel like they can do what they're good at rather than feeling they had to give the ball to Jack Grealish. So I think you are seeing a better team with Aston Villa than what there's been in the previous two Premier League seasons. Last season, the lockdown league, forget about that. The previous season, they was lucky to be in the league last season. They should have been relegated
yeah,
after the Sheffield United, the ball that crossed the line, but
yeah,
didn't. And again, that was Martin Atkinson as well, by the way. Didn't give that. So I look at Villa and they look a better team than what they did. Always good to have an individual, but it is teams that win you big games. Teams that take you to those high positions. Teams that if you can get out of trouble, it's a team effort, not an individual. Individuals will win you certain amount of games and make a difference, but over a football season, it has to be a team. Has to be. And if it's just a one-off game, we can talk individuals, but to stay in leagues, to win leagues, it's teams that go and do it. And now Aston Villa are looking a better team. It will never be said by the manager, but in his back of his mind, I think he's happy what he's got now. He's seeing more players who have come out of themselves now and more comfortable with themselves.
yeah. On that aspect, they're probably looking at the difficulty that Wolves and West Ham gave United, Southampton. They're going to look at Newcastle. Well, probably mirror Newcastle's resolve, really. But I know Newcastle fell apart in the end. But they've got a better team, a better defence than what Newcastle have. So you can imagine that they're going to turn up unapologetically looking to make life difficult for United.
Yeah, I mean, what they've got as well, though, is that they're better attacking wise than those teams you
Yeah,
mentioned, to be
yeah,
perfectly honest. Even though Wolves done what they've done against United, they absolutely, they took them to it, took the game to them, to be perfectly honest. And then you look at Villa, and Villa have got definitely more about them. They're more controlled, and their midfield they've got a bit in midfield as well, especially with McGinn as well, the way he is and the way he moves around. So this is a difficult fixture coming up from one, that they're going to have to work hard at. And Ollie is virtually be interesting what he goes and does, but it wouldn't surprise me if he goes tried and tested again, like he did yesterday, and sticks with that because he doesn't seem like he's ever going to or want to go far away from playing in that way.
yeah,
It's not the most enterprising, definitely not the most creative, but if he's getting results, then he's not going to change, to be perfectly honest, as much as he might want to go in his flamboyant way of wide players. I don't think he wants to do it. That's why Sancho, it's going to be a difficult time for him because he's got to come off. He'll get to the point where he feels he's got to come off and beat five people and score a goal or make a goal. And the longer he leaves him and not letting him have a regular run, it's going to get harder and harder for him because the press are going to start talking and talking. Like the Van der Beek one.
yeah,
Ollie's statement about him was, I was going to take him a while to get used to the Premier League. That's a load of rubbish. The lad's played in the Premier League. The lad is an Englishman. So adapting for that kind of figure, 70 odd millions, there's no time for that. Eric Cantona come across and leaves for £1 million. Bang, he was off.
yeah.
So I'm not really having that about what he said about he needs time. That's wrong. That's really, really wrong. He hasn't said that about Van der Beek, and it's come from a different league. He's not English. He hadn't played in a Premier League before. Never said about him saying that he never cost 70 million, did he?
That's going to be an interesting selection, the Villa one, because I think Van der Beek and Sancho are the key players that you'd be looking at to say, well, this is a game for them to play in, like the Newcastle one. But obviously, the players coming back from injury, McTominay is back. Fred obviously had that game what he missed against Newcastle with the which he couldn't start against Newcastle with the Brazilian thing, but all those bodies back in now. Like Pogba was moved to the left yesterday, and if Raiola's noises about Pogba's never signed a new contract in all the time that he's been at United the second time, and Raiola has always made these noises, so you'd have to think that he's making the noises to agitate for a move finally. And then, like you said earlier, again, this is one for future conversations, basically. But it's going to be interesting to see how he handles that Sancho, Pogba kind of thing, and then Rashford as well. That's it for this week, guys. Please leave us a nice review or rating on Apple Podcasts if you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe as well if you've been watching on YouTube. We'll be back next week. Stay safe, stay well, and thanks for listening and watching.